She came out and she said, I apologize. Like, I went too far, but it wasn't sincere.
We're on the first day of casting. And I just kept looking and looking and looking, just as high as Rachel reached that.
The golden girl who was supposed to be Hollywood's next big thing, the Spielberg-approved ingénue with the voice of an angel and the press tour charm to match. But behind the glitter and headlines, a much darker narrative has started to take shape, because according to the latest buzz circling the industry, none other than Steven Spielberg himself,
Rachel Zegler, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantata is the only global solution.
Lines that they say, like magic mirror on the wall. It was a lot of fun.
Disney deleted Someday My Prince Will Come and made a modernized feminist alternative.
Broke out with this news, and I'm very, very, very excited and looking forward.
Last week was a very big week, objectively a huge week. We had quite a few announcements. It's the first live-action film, which is Snow White and the Evil Queen. And that's me, I'm Snow White, which is so funny.
the man who handpicked Zegler for West Side Story, is now allegedly calling the experience of working with her downright horrible. And let's be clear, Spielberg doesn't throw words like that around lightly. We're talking about one of the most respected, seasoned directors in the game. If he's out here saying it was a nightmare working with you,
into this, the first villain Disney ever had. It's really getting myself into this big crown.
So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
Controversy in Snow White. The dwarves have been eliminated in the live action.
Yeah.
Now it's Snow White and the 7 magical beings.
Wait, it's 7 and the magical beings?
Yeah,
They won't even say
magical
and the 7
beings.
dwarves?
No, because they're not dwarves. For right now, that's the only jobs that are there.
It's awful, generic. Never mind that the lyrics make no sense at all. All you have to do to make your dream come true is let it echo. Is it like on a metaphor?
that's not just tea. That's a whole DMN kettle boiling over. And here's where it gets even juicier. This little bombshell doesn't drop in isolation. It comes hot on the heels of Snow White's catastrophic box office flop, a project that was supposed to be Ziegler's big Disney moment. Instead,
remaking the movie, they just got rid of the dwarves. But they have one token dwarf amongst these magical creatures. You actually just went backwards. You actually just erased the dwarfism side of it. The disability, like we're a disability group, you just erased that whole.
They say all you have to do to make your wish come true is let it echo, 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 echo.
Now, I'm guessing that she's not married. I'm guessing that she doesn't have kids. The movie is a complete disaster, by the way.
And, you know the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million.
The movie turned into one of the studio's most embarrassing disasters in recent memory. Fans turned away, merch sales tanked, and now people are asking the real question. Is there a common denominator here? Because this isn't the first time Rachel Zegler's name has been tied to drama. It's starting to feel like everywhere she goes, controversy follows. Whether it's feuding with co-stars, alienating fans with tone-deaf interviews, or stepping into
Pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film.
So apparently, according to them and according to the writers of Snow White, women can't even want to be in love anymore.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
It's got extra musical numbers that are incredibly unnecessary that really add to that runtime. And let me go ahead and let you know that they're absolutely f***ing atrocious.
Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
Political minefields that blow up in the middle of a press tour, Zegler has become a magnet for headlines, and not the good kind. So is this all just bad luck? Or is Hollywood finally pulling back the curtain on what it's really like to work with her? Stay with me, because what comes next might just change the way you see Rachel Zegler forever. On screen, West Side Story gave us a dreamy, colorful spectacle.
I sat through the whole thing. This was really bad. It was extremely leftist on every political dimension. Racial politics, sexual politics, class politics, regime politics. Its narrative was cowardly. It was just awful.
Doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb.
The movie has a major identity crisis.
The new Disney boss babe, who is Rachel Zegler, the inverse of—
Oh my God.
This is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
Big dance numbers, powerhouse vocals, and all the glossy magic you'd expect from a Spielberg film. But off screen, the vibe was reportedly a whole different story. Turns out, the set of West Side Story wasn't as harmonious as the choreography made it seem. The first big red flag, fans were quick to notice that Rachel Zegler and her co-star, Ariana DeBose, who played Anita and gave one of the most acclaimed performances of the film, unfollowed each other on Instagram shortly after filming Wrapped. And in Hollywood, that's the modern-day equivalent of flipping the table at a dinner party. In an industry where everyone plays nice publicly, even if they secretly can't stand each other, an unfollow speaks volumes. The two actresses never addressed the digital fallout directly, but insiders claimed there was tension bubbling beneath the surface throughout the production. Sources whispered that Zegler's alleged attitude on set rubbed more than a few people the wrong way, with some describing her as difficult and hard to direct. And when Ariana DeBose started raking in awards recognition, including winning the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, let's just say the awkward silence from Zegler's camp didn't go unnoticed. But the tension wasn't just limited to her dynamic with DeBose. There was another situation that left people raising their eyebrows: Zegler's radio silence during the scandal surrounding co-star Ansel Elgort. When allegations surfaced against Elgort, several cast members and fans expected Zegler, the film's leading lady, to take a stand, or at the very least, acknowledge the situation. But she stayed completely quiet. No statement, no support, nothing. That silence didn't sit well with audiences, especially since Zegler has built her brand on activism and speaking out about social justice issues. Critics called her out for the double standard. How could she champion accountability and women's empowerment on one hand, but go mute when the controversy hit a little too close to home? Behind closed doors, the whispers kept growing. Crew members allegedly described the atmosphere on set as icy at times, with Zegler isolated from parts of the cast. Some even hinted that Spielberg himself grew frustrated with her behavior as production dragged on, though, of course, nothing was ever said officially. But if you connect the dots, the social media fallout, the off-screen silence, the behind-the-scenes tension, it paints a pretty messy picture. And for someone who was being positioned as Hollywood's next sweetheart, the cracks were already starting to show. And as we're about to see, West Side Story was just the beginning of the drama. Because what happened next would follow Zegler straight into her next big project, and things only got worse from there. By the time Rachel Zegler stepped into the iconic role of Snow White, the backlash was already locked and loaded. And honestly, she walked straight into it. What was supposed to be her fairy tale moment quickly turned into a PR nightmare. And the worst part? Most of the damage was self-inflicted. It all started with Zegler's now infamous press tour interviews, where she couldn't help but trash the very movie she was hired to remake. Instead of honoring the original 1937 classic, Zegler took every opportunity to call the story outdated and weird, going as far as saying Snow White wouldn't be saved by the prince in this version because, in her words, she's not going to be dreaming about true love. Now, was that her call to make? Probably not, but she said it anyway, over and over again. Fans of the original were furious. Disney loyalists didn't appreciate hearing the lead actress slam the legacy of one of the studio's most beloved films. And the Disney adults? Oh, they do not play around when it comes to their classics. Social media lit up with fans calling for a boycott months before the movie ever hit theaters. Hashtags like "Not My Snow White" started trending almost immediately. But the controversy didn't stop at poor media training and awkward sound bites. Zegler also made headlines for her outspoken political views, especially her highly publicized Free Palestine post. While she has every right to her opinions, the timing couldn't have been worse from a business standpoint. Sources claim the post created serious internal headaches at Disney. Execs were reportedly caught off guard and scrambling, fearing backlash from both investors and certain markets abroad. And behind the scenes, security at Disney events had to be increased, allegedly because of the threats and outrage stirred up by her statements. It put Disney in an impossible position. On one hand, they'd cast Zegler to appeal to a younger, socially conscious generation. On the other, her comments and combative stance alienated the core audience they needed to show up and buy tickets. Parents weren't thrilled. Merch partners allegedly started getting cold feet. There were even reports that pre-orders for Snow White costumes tanked, with families flat out refusing to dress their kids as a version of the character that felt, to many, like a complete rejection of the fairy tale magic they loved. And let's not forget, this was supposed to be Zegler's Disney princess era, the dream gig, the role every young actress grows up wanting. Instead, the headlines were brutal. Interview clips of her mocking the prince storyline went viral for all the wrong reasons. Influencers tore her apart on TikTok and YouTube, calling her out for arrogance and disrespect toward the fanbase. It wasn't just bad optics, it was a full-blown disaster. The controversy overshadowed every promotional effort Disney tried to make. No matter how many trailers they dropped or how many posters they hung, the conversation always circled back to Zegler's comments. And if you thought things couldn't spiral any further, just wait, because the damage she did before the release was nothing compared to how badly the film would actually perform once it hit theaters. The numbers don't lie, and for Disney's Snow White, the numbers were nothing short of a disaster. With a bloated production budget reportedly between $240 to $270 million, not including marketing costs, this was supposed to be Disney's next big win in the live-action remake machine. Instead, it flopped hard. The global box office haul barely scratched $194.6 million, making it one of the studio's most embarrassing financial faceplants in recent years. Think about that for a second. A Snow White movie, arguably the crown jewel of Disney's classic catalog, couldn't even break even. And for a brand that spent the last decade cashing in on nostalgia, this wasn't just a miss. This was a wake-up call. And here's the thing. People aren't blaming the script. They aren't blaming the director. They aren't blaming the VFX. Nope, the finger is pointed directly at the star of the show, Rachel Zegler. Insiders from Disney and even some connected industry analysts have been pretty blunt about where they think this went wrong. According to several reports, the studio underestimated just how much damage Zegler's controversial press tour and social media presence would do to the film's bottom line. By the time the movie hit theaters, a large chunk of the core Disney audience had already checked out. Parents weren't taking their kids. Hardcore Disney fans were boycotting. Even the casual moviegoers were scrolling past the trailers, more interested in laughing at Zegler's viral interview clips than actually buying a ticket. And let's be honest, the merch shelves told the same story. Costume sales tanked. Tie-in products gathered dust. Halloween sales were reportedly way below expectations because, as one insider put it, kids didn't want to dress up as the princess their parents were mad at. The marketing team tried to pivot. They pushed out clips that focused on the supporting cast. They leaned into the classic songs. But no matter how much they tried to steer the narrative, the controversy surrounding Zegler was too loud to ignore. And in the business of fairy tales, bad press is poison. But here's where things get even messier. The reaction wasn't just about box office numbers. This was personal. Zegler's entire public image became a battleground, splitting audiences right down the middle. On one side, you had her defenders, the crowd who applauded her for standing up for what she believes in. They pointed to her outspoken political activism, her Free Palestine posts, her criticism of Trump, her takes on social justice, and called her brave. They framed the backlash as proof that Hollywood punishes young women who speak their minds. But on the other side, it was brutal. Fans and critics alike argued that Zegler's activism wasn't the issue, it was her delivery, the constant condescension in interviews, the dismissive attitude toward the original film and its fan base, the way she mocked the very story that gave her the role in the first place. People didn't see passion, they saw arrogance. Industry folks started quietly distancing themselves too. Rumors swirled that insurance costs on future projects skyrocketed if Zegler's name was attached. Some agents allegedly warned clients to steer clear of any production where she might be involved, calling her box office poison in a tiara. Even within Disney, sources claimed that there were heated internal debates about whether they should have recast the role altogether after the first wave of backlash hit. It wasn't just the public losing faith, it was the people behind the scenes. And while Zegler and her team tried to spin the narrative as haters gonna hate, the receipts told a different story. The audience had spoken, not with tweets, but with their wallets. They didn't show up, they didn't buy in. And in Hollywood, that's the only language that matters. But as damaging as the box office numbers were, the real fallout was still to come. Because once the smoke cleared from Snow White, the spotlight turned back to the person at the center of it all, and her reputation was about to take an even bigger hit. Rachel Zegler's recent professional endeavors have been overshadowed by a series of controversies and alleged on-set tensions. The purported comments from Steven Spielberg add a significant layer to the narrative, suggesting challenges in her collaborative efforts. As Hollywood continues to evolve, the industry watches closely to see how Zegler navigates these turbulent waters.